Yeah.
We'll be fine.
As far as our next guest here, he's joining us from the frozen north. Weren't you just talking about how cold it's been?
Yeah, Milwaukee was 17. I'm looking up Minneapolis right now to see what it is out there.
3 or something. It's been single digits.
Anthony Slater joining us. Yes.
Dude, the low was -1.
I've never seen this before, but yesterday I was like wanting to maybe get out and get a little lunch. I just got to Minnesota and I went to the weather app to look, and it was just 0 exactly. I was like
0.
I was like, I would almost prefer 1 degree in like one direction.
Yeah.
Didn't give me minus. I was like, just 0 degrees.
0.
Yeah, I know what you mean. 1 just feels like, I can live in 1, but 0, no chance. Drapes just pointed out here that Kings fans are ready to. A lot of them are ready to trade De'Aaron Fox. I don't know about that, Anthony Slater, but
yeah, what have I missed?
Not a lot. No, you're making it sad. There are some a handful. There's chatter out there among the fans.
Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, not about De'Aaron Fox specifically, but what are you hearing as far as the trade market and the Kings? Has anything changed since last week? I know we ask you every week.
Yeah, not really. It's like you hear you talk to some of these like front office people at games, scouts, and it's like a lot of them are heading back home in like the next week or so to begin the trade deadline prep conversations, because this is one of those checkpoints of the year where front offices really need to make decisions, right? It's around draft time, around free agency time, and then right around the deadline. So that's usually when like it heats up a bit more. Obviously, like there was just a trade made, right? Nick Richards to Phoenix. Again, that's not going to bust the Western Conference wide open, but there's kind of these smaller nibbles have happened. Dennis Schroeder, Dorian Finney-Smith. To me, the bigger ones, the ones where teams are asking for overpays, right? Nikola Vucevic, Cam Johnson's the one that obviously Kings fans are interested in. Those typically happen closer to the deadline because you're waiting for somebody to budge on these price tags that are too high. So to answer your question, basically at the same point, the name that I keep hearing most for the Kings is Cam Johnson.
Still hearing that. Let me ask you this though, Slates. There's this nice little winning streak they had, 7 games in a row, 7-2 since Doug took over. How do you think that impacts any kind of move that Monty and those guys might look at?
I think it's more motivating and realistic for them to use some of future capital to help this team. I mean, we talked about it last week. Like, how wise is it to move a future first if your 3 years from now is looking bleak, if it looks like De'Aaron Fox might be gone, if it looks like this team can't compete right now? Well, it looks a lot more like it's possible they could compete right now, right? They leaped up from 13 and 19 when they were tumbling down towards the Utah Jazz and Blazers to now they're in the play-in as of this moment, ahead of the Warriors, ahead of the Suns, and playing better than a lot of the teams even in their direct vicinity above them. So again, it's hard because as a decision-making front office, typically you talk to these people and they don't want to be reactionary in like 6-game samples, one way or the other, like a 6-game losing streak, a 6-game winning streak. Like, you don't want to judge all of your decision-making on that. But they kind of did save their season a little bit with this winning streak, right? So if you did that, then it's more, it's more worthy to try to help this team out.
Anthony Slater with us, and he's in Minnesota, where the Warriors are going to play the Timberwolves tonight. So, Anthony, could you please clarify the messaging coming out of Golden State for us? I know a lot of fans there are saying, they're waving the white flag. What does "we have to be responsible" mean exactly in terms of this trade deadline for the Warriors?
Yeah, these fans have been something recently. I got to tell you, you mentioned the Fox, situation down there, but yeah, it's a little panicky around the Warriors right now. As far as the messaging that you're saying, I think it's being taken too much of like a coordinated effort by Steve Kerr, Draymond Green, and Steph Curry to come out all at the same time and be like, "Don't mortgage the future, don't trade anything. We're fine going to the lottery." That's not what it was. Draymond Green talked to Vinny Goodwill from Yahoo in the locker room at the start of this road trip for 5 minutes and mentioned like he doesn't want them to go all in with a bunch of picks. I separately didn't even know Vinny had asked Draymond that, was talking to Steve Kerr shoot around in Toronto about just kind of like a bigger picture state of the franchise. And he mentioned, hey, they shouldn't just use all their, 4 picks and 3 pick swaps and and go big game hunting because there's no big game there, and they don't want to, basically mortgage a future beyond Steph Curry just for, he called it a wild swing. That would have been Lauri Markkanen this summer, by the way. That's what it would have cost them to get him. And how much does that move the needle? That's a question. And then because those comments surfaced, Steph Curry naturally was asked in a scrum about it. And then he gave, he echoed those sentiments, and that really landed nationally because it was the star of the franchise who's about to turn 37, basically saying, hey, don't sell it all off for me. And I think that too much also was taken as him saying, don't even make any trade. They're going to be active over the next couple of weeks. They're maybe on the fringe of the Cam Johnson talks. Nikola Vucevic interests them. They might go help this team. They're just not going to help this team in a way where it's like, hey, here's a ton of firsts. We're going to overpay for Jimmy Butler or, Zach LaVine, name your guy, and really handcuff themselves long-term.
Hey, Slates, obviously a lot of names are being floated around out there, and we've already seen some trades. Do you think this will be a robust trade deadline these next 3 weeks, like Wild Wild West, where everybody's making deals, or do you think it'll be more smoke and less fire, if you will?
More smoke, less fire, more like fringe anonymous reports and less like, I guess contending, changing, action. Because of a couple of reasons. It's always a little bit like that, right? There's always, Zion here, this, there.
Right.
Are the Pelicans even really talking about Zion Williamson? They're going to sell him at his lowest right now? I don't think so. But also, and we don't need to get too deep into this, but the new CBA with the apron rules has really constricted some of the ability to make trades. Like a lot of these trades just aren't legal or smart, but for these teams because of all these new CBA rules. And again, we don't need to be sitting here talking about aprons, but that's just the reality. And so I don't think it's going to be crazy, but at the same time, like Dallas, for example, last year, we've talked about this. They got PJ Washington, they got Daniel Gafford, and it wasn't huge news at the time, but that probably changed the West. They won the West partly because of those trades. So something big could happen. Again, like Cam Johnson going to the Kings isn't probably not going to change who's going to win the NBA championship this year, but it could change the Kings' outlook, and certainly locally that would land well. So, stuff like that, maybe a few of those type of moves around the league.
Slate's taken a wider view of the Western Conference. Obviously, for the last couple seasons at least, it has appeared that the Western Conference has been wide open. Does OKC's rise, and it looks like, that could be a team that maybe they're going to dominate for a few seasons here. They may be set up for that. Does that potentiality, does that change the picture for other teams in the West going forward this year at the deadline, and also as far as their short-term and long-term plans?
Maybe a little, but you can't act scared too much. I think Daryl Morey did this, right? Remember when Durant went to the Warriors and Daryl Morey said, it doesn't matter. I'm going to try to build what I can build. Yeah. And he he had those hardened CP3 teams, and they pushed the Warriors to the brink a couple times. That never resulted in the championship. But that was good roster building by the Rockets. That's a very respectable era. And I think it's the same with what's going on now. Like, first of all, I'm not sure. Like, we still need to see with the Thunder in the playoffs.
Fair enough. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I don't think we can't just pencil them in for they're going to 5 of the next 6 finals. Number one. Number two, and it's interesting. I mean, you talked about some of the comments coming out of the Warriors. One of the things that Steve Kerr was talking about basically is like, look, like we still want to compete for Steph Curry. We still want to give our fans thrills and have, a competitive team, even if they lose in the first round, lose in the second round, just like getting him on that stage, just having those big moments, still having those big games. It's like, it's fine if they don't win a ring. You still want to be competitive. And I'd say the same thing about the Kings. You guys feel this, like how much more fun is a season where the Kings might make the second round, where, they're going to battle with some teams. Maybe they'll have a series that was as entertaining as that Warriors-Kings series from a couple of years ago. I don't think the Kings are going to win the championship this year. I don't think there's a move out there that would change that dynamic, but I still think they should try to compete. And, you need to build with that in mind. Like, go out there and make swings that might not necessarily get you into the contending tier, which is only 3-4 teams deep, but still, like, be a valiant, tough to beat team in the playoffs.
Hey, Anthony, so much is being made about, Cam out there in Brooklyn, but what about some of the players in Portland and Utah? What do you think those two franchises are up to?
You never know. All these franchises have, and it's funny because like a lot of times you hear, one side, hey, go get this player, hey, go get that player. And it's like, do you know how like these front offices are operating? Chicago is a great example of, they've gone 3 straight deadlines where everybody in the world would say they should sell, and they don't because they're trying to chase down a plan. As far as Portland and Utah, I mean, Jeremy Grant, I think it's very gettable. Like, do you want DeAndre Ayton's contract? The problem is a lot of their big veterans have huge deals where it's like you might want the player, but it's going to take a lot to get the player. You're going to have to give away some of your rotation literally just because of salary matching purposes to go get those type of guys. John Collins, he's probably on a reasonable enough deal. I mean, it's why when you hear a lot of these Kings rumors, it's typically guys that are in that like 20-ish million and a little bit above range, because that's kind of where, like, let's say they trade Lyles and Herter, which is always the package that's mentioned. That kind of gets you close to the salary matching there without really puncturing your rotation too much, right? Herter and Lyles are playing, but you're not killing your rotation if you flip them for a helpful player. So, I mean, I guess that's a long-winded way of answering. Like, I think Utah will sell for sure if they see the right deal. Now, guess who you're dealing with though? Danny Ainge. It takes a lot to get him off a guy.
He'll rob you blind. Slates, he's really good at that. Yeah. He's the one.
That's why the deadlines help, though, because he might get there and he may be trying to, and all these teams may be trying to rob you blind, as you said right now. Because shoot, if you're going to say yes, cool, but then come February 5th, they got to decide: do I want this player on my roster into the offseason or not? What can I get from? Okay, fine, I'll take 2 seconds, whatever.
All right, Slates, we appreciate it. Enjoy the game and stay warm, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, fellas.
We appreciate it very much. When we come back, Anthony Slater addressed it. Where should the expectations